because you're afraid of the actions that you take having more of a negative impact than a positive impact, or taking too swift and too forceful of an action.
Right.
And the idea is to find the space in between. So quite often with interactions between Mars and the nodes, things will be attracted to you so that it activates that energy that you're somehow holding back. Hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else with questions at all? Okay. I'll pause the recording for a bit so that you don't have this.
Right is Savitur.
What is a quality? So in other words, if something is placed in Hasta Nakshatra and there's a weak moon as the emissary, what is a quality of what may happen to that particular area of the person's life?
In Uttara Falguni, actually the union is made contractually, and Hasta is where the work for the union is done.
Yes,
and
good.
So the more weak the nourishment for that particular work will be weak, or they'll not be getting enough nourishment from the moon because it's weak.
A way that I have found that works is it brings a sense of struggle to that area of life, which generally makes the individual respond in one of two ways. They usually try to exert more control over the situation, or they are unable to adapt to the situation, because the moon is all about adaptation. Good. But what I'm wanting people to really get, and that's why I'm asking people about specific planetary placements, is I'm wanting everybody to get how you use this. Because the important thing to remember is the nakshatras are all about growing things. So it tends to indicate how you're growing that particular thing in your life, right? What the quality is of that. Okay. So it's Maria's turn. How about, let's say, Mrigashira Nakshatra. Let's say the person has a career planet in Mrigashira Nakshatra. What are some things that are likely to happen in that person's career?
They are looking for fulfillment. They would like to be feeling like whatever it is that they are pursuing, they are looking for real fulfillment through that thing, whatever that is.
Exactly. And what you'll find happens with these people, and I have encountered it in every single instance when there is a career factor placed in Mrigashira Nakshatra, the person will be constantly taking their career apart and putting it back together again. They'll be continually changing job positions. They'll do one thing in one moment, and then they'll switch to another thing. And then they'll look around them at all the people that they know, and they'll go, why am I the only one who seems to be doing this? And then they'll start judging their success by everybody else around them and kind of blame themselves and go, why am I seemingly unable to stick with something long enough or be successful with something? And then generally at a certain point in life, the individuals will reach a point where they recognize that all those different paths that they wandered down, that they thought that they were being inconsistent with, are actually joined together in one particular thing where they're using and utilizing all those talents that they acquired along the way. Okay, good.
Yeah, I know. I have a friend where this exactly what you just described happened that way. Very much so. Like all these different chapters in his career, but in the end, with each one, in the end, it made for then a phase in his life professionally where all of these different skills and talents and all came together.
Exactly. Exactly. And there's a myth in association with Mrigashira Nakshatra. I'm not sure if I told this story in this class, and it's about how basically the moon, who's always in mythology considered a very enchanting type fellow, right? He convinced Jupiter, who's known as Brihaspati, who's the priest of the gods, to start his sacrifices early so that the moon could sneak in and elope with Jupiter's wife. And so the moon kind of snuck in and eloped with Jupiter's wife and took Jupiter's wife away, whose name was Tara. And basically, the moon got Jupiter's wife pregnant. Jupiter didn't know about that at the time, but he got angry that the moon had eloped with his wife, and so he went and confronted the other gods, and they arranged so that the moon had to give Jupiter's wife back to him. But then Jupiter discovered that his wife was pregnant by the moon, and soon his wife gave birth to Buddha, or Mercury, right? And so basically, Jupiter, seeing such a charming child, decided that he would raise the child himself. So there's always this quality with Mrigashira Nakshatra of separation and then rehabilitation, coming back together again. And so you'll find that if somebody has a career factor in that, they'll do that. Another thing, too, is if you have a client who is coming to you and is saying, I broke up with my partner, is it likely that we're going to get back together again in the future? Well, if you're looking at a future time where relationship factors come together to potentially create that event, and Mrigashira is there and it happens to be a strong Mars, then the case is stronger that may happen again. Okay? So this is how you can begin to use a lot of these things. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question, Michael.
Yep, go ahead.
They have, if Rahu is in Mrigashira in like the 6th house, for instance, so what would that individual be? They would just probably be unsatisfied with those types of...
Yeah, there's a tendency, well, number one, I would say there would be a tendency to perhaps continually assess one's health. And go, okay, well, I'm not sure what's at the root of why I'm ill, so maybe I'll look into taking some remedies for this in order to make it better, but that's not really working. I'm still feeling bad and I can't figure out what it is, so I'm going to go try this, because Rahu's prone to creating undiagnosable diseases.
Oh, okay.
So with Mrigashira Nakshatra, they may continue trying all sorts of different elixirs, because Mrigashira is also associated with Soma, which is...
Or would they be drinking maybe?
Could be. There could
alcohol?
be that. Could be drinking problems lead to certain things. That's another thing. In addition to that, Rahu in the 6th just generally tends to bring a certain level of stress. And so the individual begins to question certain paths in their life and then tends to try to be given towards escapism when they can't figure things out. And so they may be prone to trying this path and that path and then leaving those paths when they're bringing more and more struggle and finding themselves in a position where they're unable to follow the rules in association with the particular path. And so then they just give up on things before they find the answers sometimes. And it depends on the strength or weakness of Mars.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
So let's see. Let's go to Blair. Tell us some things about Vishaka Nakshatra. Hello, are you there? Oh, sometimes people step away from their computers. Okay, we'll mute there. Johanna, can you tell us something about Vishaka Nakshatra? Hello, hello. Oh, you've got two people who are not by their computer. That's okay. People tend to come in and start things recording and then step away. We'll go ahead and proceed on with class. Let me mute everybody. Okay, everybody's muted now. So if you have questions, you'll have to unmute yourself. Let me find the slide we were at from last week, and then I'll share it with everybody. Okay, we had left off with Shravana Nakshatra, and somebody was kind enough to email me yesterday and tell me that I had forgotten the yoni associated with Shravana Nakshatra, which is a monkey. Okay, monkeys can be quite intelligent when they're confronted with situations, but when they also like to be the alpha animal. If you ever witness monkeys, they have this tendency to bang their hands on the ground because they're trying to assert who's the alpha. And so when stressful situations are confronted, they may try to prove their strength or prove their worth. They may be prone to flitting from one particular way of looking at things to another, but they are also quite intelligent and can generally find a way to come up with a solution utilizing whatever tools they have in front of them. Okay? And that fits in with the whole quality of listening. Listening for direction. That's a very important quality of Shravana Nakshatra. Okay. So we're going to move on to Dhanishtha Nakshatra. Okay, so the deity connected to Dhanishtha Nakshatra, or rather the deities, are the Vasus. Vasus means the good, or the excellent ones, or the supporting ones. And these are basically the earth, water, the pole star, moon, wind, fire, dawn, and the light. Okay? These are the Vasus. These are the things that support our existence. Without the earth, we'd have nothing to stand upon and nowhere to grow our food. Without water, we would die of thirst. Without the pole star, we would have no sense of direction. Without the moon, we couldn't see at night, right? Without the wind, there would be no movement because we would know no movement. We wouldn't know the quality of movement because wind is that which creates movement, okay? And we need wind in order to sustain fires. Okay, wind is also notable for change. So change is what stirs the fire within us. Without dawn and light, we would feel that we were living in eternal darkness. Okay, the Vasus are also known as the gods of light and abundance. So with Dhanishtha Nakshatra, it's interesting because this falls upon the tail of Shravana Nakshatra. Okay, with Shravana Nakshatra, it's all about listening. And there's also a quality with Shravana Nakshatra of confusion in regard to the path ahead. Because if you remember, we're looking at the last of the nakshatras. We're looking at the nakshatras that have a sattvic foundation. And so there's a point with Shravana Nakshatra of trying to intuit the path ahead. But we can see so many different paths. So which one is the path? And on some levels, there's a very important connection between Shravana Nakshatra and Dhanishtha Nakshatra. And actually in the Nakshatra Sutras, Dhanishtha Nakshatra is called Shravishta, which is very similar to Shravana. Okay, so this is about making the connections from Shravana and referring back to the source of our existence. I'm going to skip ahead to the symbols for this nakshatra. And there are different, I've heard mridanga before. I've also heard of a different type of drum with Dhanishtha Nakshatra, and equally Krishna's flute. So basically, how does music come into being? For music to come into being, you must have an instrument with which to make the music, and you also have to have a musician. Without one of those components, you can have no music. Okay, so we are each Krishna's flute, or we are also each a mridanga. And so we're the instrument through which the music of the divine is played. And it's interesting too, because you'll find quite often people which have a self-related factor in Dhanishtha Nakshatra will tend to have a tendency to be musicians. So quite often you'll find that happening. Okay, so there is the concept of referring back to the source. What is the source of our existence? What gives us prosperity? Well, by the very fact that you have been born into a human body, even though you face all sorts of trials and difficulties along the way, by the very fact of being born, you're prosperous because you have all that you need here in creation to support you. You have the earth, you have water, you have the pole star, you have the moon, you have wind, you have fire, you have dawn, and you have light. And those are abundance. So there's a quality with Dhanishtha Nakshatra in regard to abundance and wealth as well. But it's interesting because you'll find most people, when there is a planet here, there will be a tendency to just want to focus. They want to know if that planet's going to bring them money, or if they're going to have fame, right? Or if they're going to have notoriety. Okay, so there's also a quality with Dhanishtha Nakshatra to either be authentic and true to one's existence and be naturally prosperous because you're just being yourself. You're allowing the music of the divine to play through you. Or there can equally be a quality, if Mars is weak, to have a desire to attention grab, because the emissary of this nakshatra is Mars. And so there can be a tendency to want to grab attention, to want to grab the limelight, because one thinks at that time that one has to work hard for their abundance, that one has to take action for their abundance. And that's the tamasic quality of this nakshatra. And we'll come to that here in a moment. So this is a chara, meaning a moving, and a chala, an unsteady, moving plant nakshatra. So moving and unsteady is always going to create this level of restlessness. That level of restlessness can sometimes become applied to the question of whether there is enough abundance and whether there is enough light shining upon one, whether one has enough. But equally, if you've got a good, solid Mars, then there can be a tendency to not want to rest unless one can find oneself in a position where they can use their natural talents. So this is a mula, or a plant nakshatra. And so you can see how when there's a weak Mars as the emissary, then there can be the potential to want to be validated for one's gifts. In other words, to want to achieve fame. I need to be validated for my gifts. Rather than understanding that the concepts of fame and abundance are things that come naturally, and even if you don't think you have it in your life, it's right in front of you all the time. But there can be the tendency, as it's a chara and a chala plant nakshatra, to constantly be seeking new sources of nourishment. When quite often there's the need to go into that space of nourishment within oneself and to create movement from that space. Okay. And so the emissary, as we already said, is Mars. This is a sattvic nakshatra at the foundation, but the two upper levels are tamasic. So let's say in its natural state with a strong Mars, well, then there's the tendency to go, this is the essence of who I am. But the world in which I live is not matching up to my natural state. So I need to find a way of bringing more of my natural talents into my existence, right? Or now that I recognize that there's a problem somewhere. It all depends on whether you have more of the tamasic qualities that are there or more of the sattvic qualities that are there. So who wants to take a guess at what would determine that? Several things could, but what one thing can you think of would determine that?
Mars.
The dignity of Mars.
Mars.
That's definitely a factor that's there, but another thing that can happen, anybody want to take a guess? A tamasic planet would bring out more of the tamasic qualities. Whereas a sattvic planet would bring out more of the sattvic qualities. Okay. And that's a way you can work with the nakshatras. Okay. This is a Bhoga nakshatra. It's about enjoying abundance. It's about enjoying support and nourishment. But it's also a Vishnu nakshatra, which is there to guide the individual to recognize that that source of support, that source of abundance is always there. When it's not there, it's just that the individual is unable to see it. And because they're unable to see it, it builds a certain level of pitta energy within them, or fire. And in addition, even if they are able to see it, they're going to want to continually they can want to take actions with their talents that nourish others. Hence, in the form of a musician who wants to create music just to bring nourishment to the listeners, right? Okay. This is a Rakshasa nakshatra. So Rakshasa nakshatras tend to be very unorthodox in their approach. They want to do radical things. They're hard to pin down. They're hard to figure out. This is people with Dhanishtha nakshatra, with self factors there, they can be very quirky. They want to always be original or a little bit different. That's the Rakshasa quality. The gender with this nakshatra is female. There is a desire for respect. They want to feel respected for what they do. Okay? And it's an active nakshatra. Anuloma caste, which is when the lower caste marries the higher caste. And with this nakshatra, that's what needs to happen. There's the need to recognize that there is an authentic level of your existence if you have a planet here, whatever that planet is associated with. Let's say that's associated with your spouse. Let's say if you've got a weak Mars, you may have a spouse who's always needing attention. Okay? And let's say that there's a strong Mars in your chart, then you may have a very ubiquitous, different, but yet very authentic person as your spouse. Okay. It's an upward-facing nakshatra, always looking to improve things. Sorry, I was jumping ahead of myself. The body part is the back. The spine is the support for us, and so that fits in with it. The yoni is a female lion, or a lion in general. Lions are very regal in their nature. Dignity is a very important thing to a lion, but they can also be very ferocious. Okay. We covered the symbol already. The Shakti is Kya-Payitri, it's Kya-Payitri Shakti, which is glory or renown to one's fathers or ancestors. Okay, so with this nakshatra, there can be a desire to want to bring renown to one's family through attaining glory. And you'll find that happens quite often. But who is the cosmic ancestor? So we always need to refer back to the source of our existence, and not just the biological source of our existence, but the actual source of our existence, which exists within us, right? So it's also that quality of renown to one's father or ancestors. If you think about it, if you know a little bit, and many of you may not, but those of you who have taken my Varga class know about the Dwadashamsha chart and how it refers to the ancestors. And with the Dwadashamsha chart, there's always this level of how we choose our parents, because those parents are there to condition us in a certain way that's going to cause us to resolve our karma. And we owe a debt to our parents for giving birth to us, which gives us the opportunity to resolve our karma. And our parents generally owe a debt to us, which is why they have to give birth to us. But all of those things are under the dictate of the infinite, or under God. And that's the one true ancestor of all of us. And so we can understand that the parents, when we first come into existence, on a certain level, they tend to represent to us gods when we're first born, right? We, look up to them on that level, really. But on another level, they are here to fulfill that position of installing the operating system that our life is meant to really kind of run on. And that's determined by the karma that we still have to resolve. Okay. The primary motivation here is dharma. So one's dharma is to fulfill one's destiny. And whatever happens on the path to doing that, that is the support that one needs. We tend to see it as being different upon occasion, though. The direction is the east. The east always brings a sense of newness and initiative. Place is an oil press. What is oil? Oil is the essence of something, whatever is being pressed out. It's pressing out the essence of something. Miscellaneous articles are ornaments, because it brings attention. Okay. And here are some of the people and professions: musicians, dancers, management side of the entertainment industry, drummers, rhythm, makers of musical instruments. On a higher level, those involved in holistic healing through channeling energy. Like somebody who does Reiki would probably have a connection to Dhanishtha Nakshatra. All right, let's see if anybody's got any questions on that or comments. Anyone? Anybody want to ask something or add something? Okay, so we're going to move on to the Taittiriya Brahmana text. The Shravistaha, most famous, okay, moving and unsteady plant nakshatra. So Vasunam, of the Vasus, the good or the excellent ones. The supporting, meaning the earth, the water, the pole star, moon, wind, fire, dawn, and light. Shravista, most famous. Bhutam, the past. Padastat, from above. Buddhihi, the thriving. Avastat, from below. So the most famous ones of the Vasuna, the most famous ones of those things that support us, are the past from above and the thriving from below. So who wants to tell me what they think about that? You're all unmuted. What does that say to you?
It's like this nakshatra is saying that to integrate those, I will call them lessons for lack of a better word, from the past, and make a thriving of the here and now.
Exactly.
From these lessons of the past.
Exactly. That's a concrete way that this nakshatra will sometimes play itself out. And because you're learning a lot of this through the nakshatra sutras, you'll know certain qualities of this that a lot of people don't know. You'll find most people, when you just talk to them about Dhanishtha nakshatra, they just know that it can make somebody famous. And that's all they know. Okay. But there is a quality of this nakshatra that if there's a problem with the planet that's in it, a way that you can help the individual is by going, you need to look back to the past. And it's not necessarily that you're looking for a solution that you worked with before, but this whole thing of reflecting upon your past will bring you the answer that you need. Because what they're doing is they're referring back to the source. And that's the past from above. The past from above is the source of existence. And because we're born, we thrive. We don't have any choice but to thrive. Even our difficulties are thriving. Okay? All right. Very good. Let's mute everybody. Let's look at an example chart. Here's a good example. Okay, so basically, here we have Muhammad Ali, who has his third lord. Being a fighter, the third house is very important. It's also how he speaks, all right? And in addition to that, his 11th lord and his 4th lord. He was very secure in who he was as an individual because he has this really strong Mars that's here. But his one great phrase that he said all the time through that Mercury was, I'm the greatest, right? And so there you go. He was, giving voice to his authenticity and bringing attention to himself by saying, I'm the greatest. And he would speak those things with poetry. He'd make up these little poems on the spot. I float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, right? So you just come up with these little poetries. That's the Mercury-Venus connection there. That's what would cause him to do that. Okay. So interestingly enough, if he would have had the right qualities to create it, he might have been an excellent astrologer. Because Mercury and Venus, if Venus is a planet creating an astrologer, and if Mercury is a planet creating an astrologer, Dhanishtha is a really good placement for that. Because it will make the person just say what is true. They will just naturally channel the information. Okay. All right. Any questions before we move on to the next one? Anyone? You can unmute yourself if you do. But if you do, please don't just hold them inside. Please ask them, because it's always helpful to kind of get them out there.
I have a question. How does it play out in one of the, just give an example of maybe how it might play out in a Varga chart?
Go a little more deeply with your question. What do you mean how it would play out in a Varga chart?
They don't have Dhanishtha in the birth chart, but then in a Varga chart they do.
You cannot have a different, my opinion, you cannot have a different nakshatra in a different Varga chart.
Okay, I forgot you did that. Okay.
That's okay. A lot of people do it that way. But in my estimation, and so here, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying in my estimation, that's not really a good way to do it, because it's denying what the nakshatras really are. which they're the fixed stars. They're not the actual fixed stars because obviously each constellation is not exactly 13 degrees and 20 minutes. Just as if you're doing a sidereal zodiac, each sign is not going to be at exactly 30 degrees. But at the same time, what we're looking at the nakshatras for is more of that stellar reference to the horoscope. So if you then begin to go, well, it's a different one in each Varga chart, it's not honoring the astronomy, I feel, behind it. It's kind of just going, well, you know, this is a completely different sky, which you can do that. And I'm not meaning to demean, because I know a lot of people who do that, and a lot of people who do that who are really excellent nakshatras. It's just, I feel pretty differently about it, that it's like it should only be the nakshatra from the Rashi chart. So if you have Venus in Dhanishtha nakshatra in, you know, Capricorn, then basically if your Venus happens to be in Virgo in another Varga chart, and it would still be in Dhanishtha nakshatra because it keeps the nakshatra. So in terms of how that might play out in a Varga chart, I could go into it, but what we'll be doing if we do that is I'd have to kind of go into all the strength judgment things and things like that now, when we're probably going to go into that in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So let's say, for instance, Venus as the seventh lord in the Navamsha chart, or the ninth lord in the Navamsha chart, and it's placed in Virgo, it could create a spouse who's very dissatisfied and not finding pleasure in the relationship because they're not getting the level of attention that they would like to get if there's a weak Mars. And you have to judge these differently in each Varga chart, dependent upon the strength of the emissary in that Varga chart.
Right.
And so you'll find it plays out differently in different areas. But that's a good question. Yeah. And that's one of the things that we're going to learn, is how this all begins to become different dependent upon where we're looking at it. So, you know, feel free to play around with using different nakshatras in other Varga charts, but I would almost guarantee that you'll likely find, and I'm happy to hear if you don't, that you get more accurate and precise results if you just stick with the nakshatra from the Rashi chart. At least that's what I found, but I could be pretty biased, so I don't have a problem with saying that. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was just noticing, Michael, that he has in this chart Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus. These are the very three nakshatras we've just been learning, and he has some of all of those qualities.
Yep.
Very much, yeah.
All together there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's move on to Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Okay. Okay, with Shatabhishak Nakshatra, so we're looking at the stages of the cosmic journey. So the individual has made connections about their existence and how they're needing to find the path back home through Shravana. They've begun to refer back to the source of their existence in order to understand a little bit more about their path, who they are, and therefore trying to understand what they can do to resolve the karma that's implicit in their existence. And here with Shatabhishak Nakshatra, one of the things that happens, but it's also multi-layered, but one of the things that happens here is a resignation to one's path. With Shatabhishak Nakshatra, if you encounter people who have a self-related factor like the moon or the sun or the Atmakaraka in Shatabhishak Nakshatra, they will feel that they're here to achieve a very specific mission. But you'll also find that on a certain level, they're not happy about what it is that they have to do. Okay. So basically, Shatabhishak Nakshatra is connected to these spiritual beings whose purpose here on the planet is to guide the evolution of humanity. And there are a few different types of these beings. I used to have like all this information in front of me in terms of the names of each group of them. So please pardon me that I don't have that in front of me right now. But one of them does so through geological changes. And so an interesting thing that you'll see with Shatabhishak Nakshatra, you can find quite often that a lot of earthquakes or things that drastically and geologically alter the Earth tend to happen when a planet's transiting Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Not always, but quite often, because there's this whole quality of things changing in relation to the Earth in order to guide the process of humanity. There's all of these groups of spiritual beings, they forego a spiritual existence in order to be in a physical human body. And so there's this whole quality of being here, but also recognizing that they're divine and really, wanting to, and much like the Deva Nakshatras, really wanting to not have to deal with that level of existence. But on a certain level, they choose to be here, right? Because they recognize they have a mission. But it's not a mission that they necessarily feel that happy about, because if you've experienced the whole concept of liberation and then you're here and you're having to deal with being in a physical human form, there's going to be a certain level of, on a certain level, there's the mythological concept of being upset about having to be here. And you witness a lot of suffering, and that's something that's not easy too. But at the same time, if you're a self-realized entity, you are able to find bliss within that existence. Okay? But there's still a working out process with Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Shatabhishak Nakshatra is connected in Taittiriya Brahmana to Indra, the conqueror, the one who conquers the senses, and so therefore is able to see things clearly. And sometimes we see things clearly and we don't necessarily like what we see. And there's also a connection in many texts with Varuna. Varuna is the god of the cosmic waters. He's the one who creates cosmic law. He's the one who places the nakshatras in the sky, which the nakshatras guide the growth of humanity. So he is simultaneously the one who clouds the true nature of existence and gives us the tools with which to uncover those the true nature of our existence. Okay, but you'll see in Taittiriya Brahmana that it's listed as Indra, the conqueror, and most other texts you'll see Varuna. Shatabhishak Nakshatra is a chara, a moving, and a chala, unsteady, and it's an animal nakshatra. So there's this restless energy, there's this energy of resignation, and so then there's the feeling that one has to assert themselves. In a positive sense, these people can make excellent leaders. In not such a positive sense, these people can be self-delusional about their path, and you can find that happens upon occasion. Okay, these people can sometimes be aggressive, and it's coming from a restless side of their nature. And that's more when Rahu is not being supported by a strong dispositor, because Rahu is the emissary connected to this particular nakshatra. You'll notice that there are two sattvic levels to the existence of this nakshatra. But there's equally a tamasic level. There's still some darkness that's there that's needing to be worked out. And that tamasic energy that's there can create this resistance. It's like that quality of, oh God, I'm here. Why do I have to do this? Right? That's a feeling that's very much connected to Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Because there is a sense of loss, right? There's a sense of, recognizing on one level that one has perhaps strayed from the path, and so they're having to take a human birth in order to work things out again. And even if they recognize that reason that they're here, there's still the whole fact that they have to be here in the first place. So things that happen in Shatabhishak Nakshatra will tend to have a quality of loss associated with it. The individual can go through chaos, they can go through confusion, right? But they do so because they're needing to work things out. They're needing to resolve their karma, which is the one true healing that can happen in their life. And you'll see that basically quite often Shatabhishak Nakshatra is referred to as a healing nakshatra. And you'll see a lot of people who are here as healers, they will have a planet in Shatabhishak Nakshatra. The Trimurti association is Shiva. Okay, so there's a desire to clear out all the karma, to clear out all the blockages that are there, to clear out the tamasic energy so that one can live more in the sattvic essence of their existence. You'll find all the Rahu associated nakshatras, there always tends to be a certain level of restlessness that's here. And this is accentuated by being a Vata nakshatra, which is about movement and restlessness. And it's a Rakshasa nakshatra. So radical steps need to be taken. And I'm going to go about this in an unorthodox manner. This is the unorthodox healer, right? Who may come up with some new modality of healing. But not always. You won't find that always being the case. Sometimes they're just a medical doctor if they've got a healing side of their personality that's coming out. Sometimes you'll find, and you find this a lot with the Rahu nakshatras, that there can be a tendency for this person towards alcoholism or addictions, because they see that as somehow being the cure for their problem. Okay. A feminine nakshatra, it wants to be recognized and appreciated for its purpose. And it wants to be able to enjoy its own purpose. And it acts in order to bring those things into its existence. And it may feel, because it's of the Pratiloma caste, that it's always having to do things that are somewhat beneath it. Okay, you'll find people with Shatabhishak placements, they'll go, why do I have to do this? I've kind of grown past that, but I'm still having to do this. The facing, it's always looking to improve things. It's looking to improve things, but it's also upset about why it has to be here in the first place. But it will still try to improve those things. The body part is chin. And it's interesting because for the body, one of the ancient texts will say laughter, but laughter is not a body part. Okay. But laughter and the chin, you hold the chin up, right? So that you keep a positive attitude rather than getting stuck in the difficulties. The yoni here is a horse. Horses are very powerful animals. They're very swift moving animals. So when there is a problem that this energy is having to respond to, they will respond with power and with energy and with pride upon occasion too, because horses can be very proud animals. The symbol of this nakshatra is a circle, which is a symbol of the totality and a symbol of the unity, but it's also a symbol of boundaries, right? I'm in here. This is the boundary that I exist within. But it's a boundary that can be expanded and it can be moved upon, and I can flower and push those boundaries further, which is another symbol of this nakshatra. The Shakti of this nakshatra is Beshaja, which is healing. or cure Shakti. So it's the power to heal things, the power to ultimately heal one's existence, which the primary motivation is dharma. The direction with it's my responsibility to heal this. It's my responsibility to deal with my karma. Some cases it's my responsibility to help and to heal others. The direction is south. South tends to be, you'll find that the South Nakshatras tend to have a certain element of retreat or going back into something. Okay, but it's also a direction that things placed in Shatabhishak Nakshatra can sometimes be found in. The place is a street. A street is a pathway that connects us from one place to another, but streets can also be very busy and difficult to cross and hard to deal with. Miscellaneous articles are aquatic creatures because of the connection to Varuna, the rope, and a net. Net is like that which creates safety for us. A rope is that which can pull us to safety. So people and professions: electricians, technology experts, chemotherapists, astronauts, astronomers and astrologers, bartenders and alcohol, physicians, detectives, inventors, yoga and meditation gurus. All right, let's see if we have interest. I want to touch on this before we proceed. If you remember back with Anuradha Nakshatra, Anuradha is connected to Mitra. And with Anuradha Nakshatra, Mitra is the one who uncovers during the day what Varuna covers over during the night. We have to find our potential. That's a mystical secret. We have to find our potential in order to work through the confusion so that we can ultimately flower. So you might say there's a connection between Shatabhishak Nakshatra and Anuradha Nakshatra. Okay, let's see if anybody has any questions or comments. Anyone?
Could you repeat that? You said find our potential through what?
Well, I was talking about Anuradha Nakshatra.
Yes.
So Anuradha Nakshatra is about finding your potential by connecting to that divine essence within you and within all things. Yeah.
Okay.
That's one way of looking at it, but it's also the fact that Mitra, the deity connected to Anuradha Nakshatra, uncovers during the day, which is when the light is there, that which Varuna covers over during the night. So the confusion that we face in our existence, which is a result of our karma, our karmas, can only be resolved through the discovery and alignment with or devotion to one's true potential, or the flowering of one's existence. And the flower is a symbol of both Shatabhishak Nakshatra and Anuradha Nakshatra. Anybody else?
Michael, do all the Rahu Nakshatras have a certain quality of this, what you called, why do I have to be here, or this restlessness, or this reluctance about being here?
If you think about it, that makes complete sense. You know, it's this whole thing of going, I'm here, I can't control my existence in order to make all this go away, and I'm having to deal with all these things that I ultimately don't want to deal with. And
yeah, right.
Now what do I do about all that? So yes, that is a quality that's there with almost all of them.
Okay, thank you.
Because Rahu is very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes so much sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Michael?
Right. Yeah.
So if we have so let's say there's a chart where the sun is the Atmakaraka in Shatabhishak, and the sun is also in a sign of great enemy. That would say that the individual would have a, shall we say, challenging time.
They can, yeah.
Their mission here.
They can on their overall life path. But what you might find is in other Varga charts, the sun might be strong. And so in those areas of life, whatever areas of those Varga charts they rule, those would be the areas of life they would excel at. But still, overall, on their life path, they would have a hard time with things.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Okay, let's look at the Taittiriya Brahmana text. So the Shatabhishak, or the 100 cures of Indra deity. Okay, so Indrasha, of Indra, of the conqueror. 100 cures, all expanse, so Shatabhishak, 100 cures. Vishvavyachaha, all expanse, Padastat, from above. Visvakshitihi, all earth, Avastat, from below. Now, I want to remind everybody, so I want to go back, and so think, even though we're talking about Indra here, let's reflect back on Varuna. So let's go back earlier on in our PowerPoint. And let's remember this particular quality that's connected with Varuna. There's something that I said earlier on in the course. Here we go. Okay. So Varuna as a Vedic deity was first connected with the skies, then the waters, then justice, then truth. Those things are all connected. Okay? So how are they connected? Right? Remember the nakshatras. The nakshatras are the stars, but they're also how we grow our existence. Right? So then the waters. Waters are causality in general. They're the causal nature of existence. The moon makes perfect sense in terms of the nakshatras, and all the nakshatras being the wives of the moon. Because the moon is responsible for the tides. It's responsible for the waters, which ebb and flow, as does our capacity to connect to our soul, or the first connection we have to the source of our existence, right? So the skies, which is what Varuna creates. He created the skies. He put the stars in the skies. He created the nakshatras. Then he was associated with the waters, or the cause of everything. Well, the cause of everything happens because of a sense of justice or balance. And then truth, which is an understanding of the nature of existence, which all goes back to the source of the nakshatras. Varuna was one of the Adityas, or sons of Aditi. The Rig Veda lists 7 of these, while the Bhagavata Puran lists 12, which are reference to the sun. There is importance to this connection, and even the sequence in which he was related to the skies, waters, justice, and truth. Varuna was noted for placing the nakshatras in the heavens. Varuna, as lord of the waters and water creatures, also relates to the oceanic consciousness of God, vast and deep. The ocean waves are a result of the moon's gravitational pull on the earth, or the mind's pull on the experiences that we're going through, or the mind's grasp of the experiences that we're going through here on earth, and how manas, or our sensory mind, will begin to have an influence upon our actions. Krishna states that amongst water creatures he is Varuna. Krishna is the incarnation of Vishnu connected to the moon. So it is no surprise to understand Varuna as the presiding deity of the moon, and in addition the oceans. Varuna placed the nakshatras in the sky. So the causal nature of our existence, Varuna is connected to the moon. The causal nature of our existence places the nakshatras in the sky and grows our life in a certain way. And each night Varuna, as the moon, visits a different one. As he does, he creates waves of consciousness. moon is also connected to the earth. As we note, Varuna is also a sun deity. Varuna as the moon bridges the Atman, more specifically the Paramatman, with the earth-bound consciousness of the Jivatman. Okay, so there's a lot that's there. And that's why Shatabhishak Nakshatra has a very special connection to Varuna. Okay, so of Indra, of the conqueror, 100 cures. The 100 cures are all expanse from above, or the skies, or the heavens, or the stars in the sky, or all of creation. All of creation, everything that we experience, is the 100 cures of Indra. And perceiving those correctly with our senses shows us and lets us know what we need to do. And that's what happens from above. We go through experiences here on earth which make us feel uncomfortable or confused until we work that out. But when we learn to live in alignment with that in our earthly existence, that's when we're actually cured of our karma. So the 100 cures of Indra are all expanse from above and all earth from below. Hey, does anybody else have any comments on the Taittiriya Brahmana text or things that it stirred to the surface for them?
So, Michael, I'm trying to mentally connect the Varuna that you read from slide 5 to Indra here.
They're not, don't try to mentally connect them because they're two different deities.
Okay.
So what do you mean trying to mentally connect them?
So you just reviewed this thing on Varuna, which I could kind of get, but I'm trying to figure out why it is you talked about that in reference to Shatabhishak. And Indra is the emissary, or the...
Because in a lot of texts, Varuna is listed as the deity connected to Shatabhishak.
Ah, okay.
Okay, but Indra in Taittiriya Brahmana is listed. Indra is listed in several different nakshatras. And all of those nakshatras that have Indra connected with them, it's important to understand that it's about clear perception and not being deceived by the senses. Okay, so use Indra, but it's good to understand the Varuna association because it tells you a little bit more about this nakshatra. As a matter of fact, if you talk to most people who know their nakshatras, they would say Varuna with Shatabhishak nakshatra. They wouldn't even say anything about Indra. Okay, but it's very clearly here in the text, Indrasha, of Indra, of the conqueror. So don't ignore the Varuna. With each of these, don't ignore, if there's another deity that I'm listing as a sub-deity, don't ignore it because there's some vital information about the nakshatra you can get, but always use the first association as per Taittiriya Brahmana.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
No problem. Anybody else?
So, with Shatabhishak, there's some aspect of sometimes things collapsing at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And is that just because as part of addressing your karma or clearing your karma, sometimes things fall away, so they collapse?
Yeah, and you'll find that is the case with all the Rahu nakshatras. So it's the case with Ardra nakshatra. It's the case with Swati nakshatra. And it's definitely the case with Shatabhishak nakshatra. There's only with Shatabhishak nakshatra, there's a greater level of chaos and confusion. I like to explain Shatabhishak nakshatra as being related to a healing crisis. And you have to go through the crisis so that you can understand how to get better. Yeah? Like when you get a cold, the actual cold and the sneezing and all the things that you're doing are because you've caught a bug that makes you sick. And so you go through the whole concept of having a cold so that you can cleanse it out. And so Shatabhishak nakshatra is very much connected to the healing crisis. This is a good way to understand the symbolism of this nakshatra. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
Yeah, I feel in this Taittiriya Brahmana description, it comes through so well, this whole thing about, like, heaven and earth merging, you know, the big heaven and the big earth in the end merging as one, which is, you know, what they are, I guess, to begin with. And the 100 cures show us all the many things we have to go through for all of this alignment to happen.
Yes, most definitely. And it's interesting because it's almost like you'll go through, I may have said this before, so sometimes I repeat things, and please forgive me.
It's okay, Michael.
But I forget that I did.
It's good for us.
Yeah, but you know, at the same time, you'll go through these and you'll look at all these. I'm getting some echo from somebody. I'm trying to figure out who it is.
Yeah.
Can't figure out who it is. Anyway.
I hear it too.
Yeah, I don't know who it is, but I'll try to talk a little more quietly, but equally loudly enough so it doesn't echo. You'll read through these and you'll go, well, they all seem to be saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's meaningful in itself. Because the one reason that we are going through this experience is because we live in delusion on a certain level. And so they all say it in the same thing, but they say it in like 27 different ways. Okay, it's about connecting to God, and that solves all your problems. So you can do it through Indra, or you can do it through Mitra, or you can, you know, so there's 27 different ways to do it, but there's a lot of meaning that are locked up in these. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to mute everybody and we'll look at a chart. Okay, so here we have somebody who was definitely on a mission. So this is Martin Luther King. And so his Venus, which is his second and his seventh lord. So second is about what comes out of the mouth. So he wanted to speak things that were purposeful. Okay. He would also speak things in terms of visions, which is a very Rahu-related quality. So the quality I'm wishing to kind of show through this is this was somebody who spoke eloquently and spoke words which were meant to guide the destiny of other people. And so it's a very mission and purpose-driven person. Okay. And you can equally look at some people who have charts and you might see that that planet in Shatabhishak Nakshatra makes them an alcoholic. Okay, so it can be different things. It just depends on the nature of the planets that are involved. Okay. But, you know, in addition to this, so we can get hung up in the negative sides of a person's existence. It was also believed that Martin Luther King was somewhat of a womanizer. And we can see that through Venus in Shatabhishak Nakshatra. Because Venus is dispositing Rahu. Okay, and it's a Venus that's not as strong as it could be. And it's the seventh lord. Okay. All right, so let's move on. First of all, let me see if anybody has any questions. We're at that moment in class where we're 10 minutes before the end, and we could either start on Purva Bhadrapada, or we could ask questions for the rest of the class and talk about things that people are confused about.
Michael, I have a question. So this is going back a couple of pages. to Muhammad Ali's chart.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm noticing is that Muhammad Ali, he's listed as having Stavana, okay, at, wait a second. Dhanishtha, okay, in Capricorn at 20 and 25, 20 and 28 minutes. But if I look at my chart at 26 minutes, I'm at Uttara Ashada.
Okay, so two different things, right?
So what I'm trying to get my brain around is, do the nakshatra is not always.
No, I know what you're asking, but there are two different answers to that. Okay. So the first of those answers was that this chart was done some time ago when I taught the nakshatras on a different course. When I did it on that different course, I did I want to use the phrase, a spattering of charts that were tropical sidereal and a spattering of charts that were sidereal.
Okay.
Just to give people examples from both sides. So this is a sidereal zodiac chart.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So that would tell me why this is different. Yeah.
That's one thing, right? And so using Lahiri Ayanamsha will affect the nakshatra position. But in addition to that, let's go into here. And so here we have a chart. You can find, and you'll go through, and you'll sometimes see two planets conjuncting each other at almost the same degree, and yet they're in different nakshatras. And it's because a way that I'm calculating the nakshatras in tropical sidereal is using Dhruva, the pole star, and the equator to judge nakshatra positions. And that changes the nakshatras a little bit, but this is actually based upon the coordinates that are listed for the fixed stars in Surya Siddhanta. So it has astronomical foundations behind it. So it's no good trying to go, if you're using a tropical sidereal system, it's no good trying to go, oh, well, I have this planet at the same degree that this other person does, so it's going to be in the same nakshatra, because it won't always be the case. That's one thing, right? In addition to that, when you're doing tropical zodiac with sidereal nakshatras, time becomes a factor. So in other words, what year someone was born in. So for instance, if we look at, let's do this. I use this as an example once. So let's go and let's tools. So there's birth time thing right there. That's what I wanted, but we'll have to close it and open it again because it's not working. Okay, so let's open that again. All right, so watch what happens when I move this. I'm going to move this a day, 2 days, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we're in Uttara Bhadrapada, which is at 4 degrees, 51 minutes of Aries. This is tropical zodiac, sidereal nakshatras. All right, so now we go. And I did this once before in class, but sometimes it takes a while for it to sink home. Then you go into open, and you go into your database, and you find politicians and rulers, and you look up Alexander the Great, who was born 300 BC.
Right.
And who equally has Rahu in Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra in Aquarius. Mm-hmm. That's because the reference between the tropical signs and the sidereal zodiac changes over time.
Right. And over for that many thousands of years, we've definitely had a little bit of a shift.
Of course, but sometimes you'll find there's a minor shift sometimes from just like 10 to 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Of planets associated with degrees. It's because these are all the different things that can create that anomaly.
All right.
All right.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
No problem. Anybody else with a question? So we've got 5 minutes left.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
This is not related completely. This has to do with Kala a little bit.
Okay.
In the new Kala, where's the Campanus house cusps?
The Campanus house cusps are in a couple of different places. Yeah. So as always, what you can do is you can pick one of your empty spaces. I think you had a problem with this before.
Right.
If you go in and you right click, you can bring up Bhava Chalita, and it should say camp in the middle of it. And you can left click on that.
Okay.
So that's one way to do it.
Okay.
Another way to do it is if you just right click anywhere, you'll notice that you've got this.
Okay. All right,
and you can just click on that and it'll bring it up.
That's right. Okay, cool.
All right.
Let me make sure. Let me get to the screen for me.
Okay. Anybody else with a question?
Yes. With Mars, if somebody has a not so strong Mars, how do they go about strengthening that?
There's lots of different ways they could do it. One way to do it is to go take martial arts classes. Because that's going to discipline the will. Another way to do it is through mantra. It depends on if the person has a strong Jupiter, then I would be giving them a mantra for Mars because that's better. If the person has a strong Saturn, I'd be giving them some sort of action to take for Mars.
Okay.
Yeah. But any of those things will work, or some sort of service to do for Mars.
Thank you.
But with Mars, it's all about using your will and using your will healthily. And martial arts classes are really good for teaching an individual how to do that. How to get that Mars under control.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Okay. Anybody else? Nope. All right. Well, we're going to stop there for tonight. And I will talk to everybody next week unless you're on tomorrow's class, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Thank you.
Take it easy. Bye now.
Thank you.